If somebody was trying to kick down my front door, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna sit back and be like, man, I hope that deadbolt holds? I'm gonna lean into that door. I'm gonna speak to that temptation. I'm gonna let it know that if it even tries to come on the other side of this door, it's got nothing but a fight. We have to treat sin and the plans of the enemy in the same way. If temptation is real and the rescue is real also, and it's possible through Jesus, and we've got this real enemy and this real enemy of our souls, then what do we do with this? How do we live this out? How do we make this prayer, make this perfect framework for partnership with God a part of our life? I want to give you a few things that we can do every single day that will help us live out, to not be led into temptation and to be delivered from the enemy. The first thing is this: you need to ask to be led every day. This is an everyday discipline. Jesus said in Matthew 26:41, this is such a frequent thing. He says, watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. If you look at the context of Matthew 26:41, you wanna know what the temptation was, what the weakness was? They were falling asleep when they should have been praying. They were just sleepy. And here's what you gotta realize: not every temptation in your life is an awful sin. There are some times that we are tempted to just take shortcuts, and those shortcuts don't get us to where we need to go. Because I'm like the disciples. When I get out of my bed in the morning, I just pray. It's like, I'll see you soon. Like, I wanna come back. Temptations are everywhere, and we know that our flesh is weak. And so we need to be praying every day, Lord, lead me and guide me. You know, as we were over here in worship, I was just praying like, Lord, what's a word for this service? What's a word for this moment? And what I felt him speak to me is that there's somebody here, you've been training somebody at work that you used to have a lot of hope in. And honestly, at this point, you wish you could figure out how to get them fired. Who's been there? It's real, man. It's real. But God has placed you in that person's life to help bring them to another level. Now, it's not inherently spiritual. You're not teaching them the Lord's Prayer. You're not going through the Sermon on the Mount. But what you're bringing into their life is going to be wisdom and life for them. And there's this temptation to abandon them because honestly, you could do it faster yourself. You know that God can put you in places where it feels carnal, but your assignment is very, very basic. And we need to be in prayer to be led for these things. Second thing is this: if you're praying this prayer and it's a part of your daily hope, your daily life with Christ, when nothing happens, it doesn't mean that nothing happened. When nothing happens, it doesn't mean that nothing happened. I'm about to say something that all of you are gonna be like, don't say it. Don't say it, don't jinx it. My kids and my family, we have not had a stomach bug all winter. Praise God. I'm just, like every parent in the room, you know what that's like. Because 2 years ago, I felt like every other week from the pits of hell, a stomach bug would attack our family. And I remember one time my wife had a tarp laid out and everybody had a popcorn bowl that doubles as a vomit bowl. Come on, we're family. And they are spread out there. And what ends up happening is I'm like, and like for me, I will fight Herlin. I will fight power yawning over the toilet as much as I can. And I'm just like, it's counting down, man, 36 hours and this is me. And I don't know how, I'm just gonna acknowledge this. My wife never got sick. What is she made of? Here's something that I feel like we need to impress on our lives. When nothing happens, it doesn't mean nothing happened. What it could mean and what it should mean and what I think it means when we live a life of prayer is that actually we're living in the provision of God, that our prayers are being answered, that when we've asked to not be led into temptation, when we've asked to be delivered from the evil one, we shouldn't look at a boring season of life as, well, I guess nothing happened here. Actually, boredom is a gift of God. It is better to have to look for something to do than have something to do look for you. We just let that sink in. This is a prayer of prevention. So why are we surprised when it works? Why? Why do we so often measure time in struggles? Because we don't experience time in a linear fashion, hour to hour, day to day. Oftentimes, like, I don't even remember what I ate 2 days ago, but I remember what I ate the day before that. And we need to realize that when we pray to be led and then we live under God's provision, that really this prayer is more about trusting in God. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says this: trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make your paths straight. He will make your paths straight. If you're in the house or at a campus or you're online and you know that you have some difficulty in front of you, maybe, I don't know, maybe you work in sales and you've just gone through really the worst months of your life. Or maybe at home, things are not going well. Then you've got to pray to be led, and then you've got to acknowledge God when he does lead. Next thing is this, and this is probably my favorite aspect, but the most difficult aspect of this whole thing. Whenever God brings you into this season of leading you through temptations and delivering you from the enemy, you get to stop fighting for comfort and you get to carry your cross. Jesus says in Luke 9:23, it says, and he said to all. And he said to all. He didn't speak to one or two people. He didn't say the specific group of people. And he said to all, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. You wanna know what it means to carry your cross? To live in a world that's full of temptation, that has an actual enemy of your soul, but to take on the mantle of carrying your cross, it means that you're gonna have to die to self. Because every temptation, at least this has been my experience, every temptation is a moment where I can shortcut to gratification in some way, shape, or form. And these comforts, they fade and they're fleeting and they don't fulfill. This is just something I think we've all experienced, and I think it's so ridiculous, but I've done it so many times. How many of you have ever seen a dessert and you knew you were already kind of full and you were like, but it looks so good. So you eat one bite and you're like, well, that bite was pretty good. You know what? I think this whole slice of cheesecake deserves to be honored in my stomach. And then you rationalize it. You think, well, I can eat this whole thing, but I'll drink some milk with it. That'll stave off the tummy ache. And the truth is, you end up right where you knew you would be. You just acknowledged that temptation was where you wanted to go. You didn't want to have the discipline to just one or two bites. You have to die to self. You have to realize that the future is honestly pretty predictable in a lot of cases. The outcome of temptation is actually pretty predictable in a lot of cases because we have to be willing to carry our cross and submit ourselves to not our will, but God's will. Because remember how we talked about that's the other side of this? You pray for the will of God and then you pray to not be led into temptation. Because if you will submit yourself to God, you will have a power in your life that transcends the difficulty of the moment. James 4:7 says this, submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil and he will flee from you. This resistance is active. You don't passively say, you know what, all these things are happening in my life. I'm just gonna figure it out as I go. No, we need to make a plan. We need to know that these things are coming. There are some of you here, and I talked to one, that you knew today was daylight savings time. And some of you, raise your hand, how many of you changed the clock last night? Yeah, there you go, my type A people. Just like me. Everything's in a spreadsheet, I bet. If it doesn't exist in Excel, it doesn't exist. And then there were some of you that woke up and your phone had already changed and your microwave hadn't, and you were like, what is happening? Every year, if anybody in government is listening, please make it stop. If we can agree on one thing, resistance is not passive. Carrying our cross is active. You know, if a temptation, you could picture it this way. If a temptation was trying to kick down your front door, if somebody was trying to kick down my front door, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna sit back and be like, man, I hope that deadbolt holds? I'm gonna lean into that door. I'm gonna speak to that temptation. I'm gonna let it know that if it even tries to come on the other side of this door, it's got nothing but a fight. We have to treat sin and the plans of the enemy in the same way, because we have to realize that we need the empowerment of God in our life to attain the purpose and the will that He has called you to, because we are not called to be defined by our temptations. We are called to be mirrors and images of the glory of God. That is our life. That is our lot. And it is worthwhile, and it is not easy, but it is meaningful. And we get to make a decision every single day. Do we live a life of ease and comfort, or do we live a life fighting for the glory of God in our life? When comfort tells you just this one time, the discipline of asking to be led must take precedent. When compromise tells you nobody else will see, nobody else will know, faith must take hold. When quitting seems easier, we have to realize that there is a God in heaven that so loved the world that He sent His Son so that you could live a life that's not meant to go from comfort to comfort, but it's meant to have eternal significance.